Big day for the Supreme Court yesterday as they reinstate parts of the executive order for Trump's travel ban, which gives Trump, quote unquote, a unanimous win when it wasn't quite unanimous. We'll get into that. Plus, the court also ruled on something that came out of here in Arkansas, saying that same-sex marriage couples can list both themselves as the father and the mother, even though they're both the same sex, on the birth certificate. We'll explain that in a bit. Plus, John McEnroe has set a diss track towards Miss Serena Williams, and Serena Williams responded, plus you guys as well. That and some more great conversations we had yesterday. This is a Conversation Daily Recap podcast for June 27, 2017. Welcome to the podcast. My name is Jake Cleveland-Payne. I am the moderator for this podcast and other things behind the scenes at thisisaconversation.com, where we like to say we're having the best conversations, the best conversationalists out there. That's you folks out there around the world via the magic of the World Wide Web. What do we do? Well, we go through all day long, 24/7. Well, we sleep sometimes, but we go through looking for the top stories, trending stories, and some just really interesting, cool stories that we think you might want to talk about. And we send links to them via our social media and our website. And you guys respond. The ones that you reply to, the ones that you like the most, the ones you share, and, of course, the ones you actually give responses to. We keep a tally of that for a big podcast on Saturday, which we call the Weekend Wrap-Up, and we keep an eye on them day by day to kind of go through the news. It gives me a chance to play a daily show, if you will, and kind of do a recap of the news from yesterday and go forward, looking forward towards the next day. You can do this and be a part of the whole show by simply following us on social media. Our Twitter handle is @_conversation. On Facebook, search for This Is The Conversation. And our main website, thisisaconversation.com. Stop by there so often. Check out our sponsors. Help us keep things going on. And we'll have a great a great reason for you to stop by. We'll talk about that towards the end of the podcast. Let's get into the news from yesterday. We opened up with a story about Hurricane Dora, and, of course, the world opened up with all sorts of cute Dora the Explorer jokes and quips and gifts and all sorts of things. Now, Hurricane Dora formed in the Pacific Ocean yesterday, or late Sunday, if you will. So now it is basically on its way towards Mexico, right off the coast. And so because Dora is Mexican, Latina, Dora the Explorer, I should say, is Mexican Latina. The hurricane has no real nationality. It just kind of was born from the ocean. All sorts of Dora the Explorer type of chants and rants and weirdness came out. And you'll probably see that all the way up until Dora hits land, when the jokes will stop being very funny. So get your Dora jokes out now, because right now is the time to have your laughs on the old Nickelodeon show. No one's laughing about the newer show, no Dora and Friends, just Dora the Explorer. I guess no one really likes the new show. The Supreme Court had a pretty big day yesterday, opening up with some nice things for the president, not so nice things for other people. Here's what the two of the biggest things that popped out. Number one, the first thing came down earlier today, something that essentially a hearing that came through from here in Arkansas, a court case that we had in our higher courts. The court knocked down a ban. I guess we'll just call it a ban. The court says that same-sex couples can be listed on a birth certificate as father and mother. So a same-sex couple that if someone gives birth to a baby, even though one of the person is not of the right sex, for example, two women have a baby by natural birth, the birth mother is obviously the mother. The other mother can be listed as the father because it's the co-spouse. This is a ruling that the Supreme Court says now has gone through. Arkansas, not so happy about that. Our Attorney General, Leslie Rutledge, put out a release on the fact that they are still going to try to do what they can to fight this. This was a case that came out of something here in Arkansas where same-sex couples were trying to get listed as, obviously, on the birth certificates, and the one of the same sex who was not of the right sex was not getting listed. Not sure how this works for father and father, since that would be an adoption, but we will see how that works out. Meanwhile, the Supreme Court also reinstated key parts of the executive order for Trump's travel ban. Now, here's how the ban works right now. The Supreme Court says go ahead and reinstate some of the pieces from the main countries that were listed on the ban, even though they are, quote unquote, Muslim majority countries. There's no reason not to flat out ban people with no ties to the United States. Now, that's where the kicker is. The problem is, if a person from that or originating company, person who originates from one of those countries, has a significant tie to the States, they already have family here, they've been going to school here, they have worked here and been working here, and they're back over there, they have the ability to travel back to the States with a little bit of a hassle, but they can still come back to the States. The ban will not keep people who are already here and traveling back and forth from going back and forth. And, of course, we're not just shipping people back to the Middle East. That's what came through. Because all the justice basically said it's okay to ban people with no ties whatsoever. Donald Trump took this as a unanimous win for him, even though it wasn't quite unanimous because some people dissented on the fact about the ties to the states. We'll see how this plays out. However, this one isn't done because the case will be seen in a few months for a full platform in front of the Supreme Court. There'll be a full hearing of the Supreme Court coming up in a few months to redo the whole thing and see how the whole thing lies. Maybe it'll be essentially rewritten from scratch from there, or maybe the court will just go ahead and grant the second version, the watered-down version that Trump doesn't like, as law for here. Takata Motors, the people who makes the airbags that have been defected and blowing up and killing people in many cases, has filed for bankruptcy protection. The biggest issue, all the recalls and all the lawsuits is costing so much money for this company that they just can't keep up, which you would expect, because they have the initial recall for the bad airbags, then subsequent recalls for bad airbags, and then lawsuits from people, dying from bad airbags. The legal ease and the financial issues are keeping the company in trouble. We'll see how well they can work this thing out and whether they actually just drop out of the airbag business and go into something else or just goes away. The CBO finally released its review of the Senate bill for the new Affordable Health Care Act, or whatever it's actually called, the new Trump Care Act on the Senate side. And because Donald Trump said the House side was mean, and of course that meanness leads to 23 million people essentially losing health care initially, the Senate tried to do a little bit better. What they did was they knocked off health care for only 22 million people initially. So in that sense, it's a little less mean. But a lot of the issues are the same issues for the other bill. What comes through is essentially a really large chunk of tax cuts for people making a lot of extra money. And they offset the tax cut to make the bill work out by cutting many of the programs like Medicaid, Medicare, the fundamental programs that cover the poor and the elderly. Now, if you don't think that's fair, apparently you're not in a secret room planning a health care bill without telling people what's going into it, because a lot of people who weren't in that room, including a lot of people on the Republican side, aren't too keen on how it came down. This thing may get voted on Thursday. The whole push was to get it voted on by the time they left for recess, which I believe actually happens on Friday. It's July 4th recess, so that will be out for a couple of weeks for the members of the House and Senate to hang out with their constituents in the summer and get some feedback there. That'd be the proper time to get feedback for the bill, but we'll see whether they actually push to get this thing voted on. Right now, they say they don't have the votes, but they have the majority of the Senate, 52 votes for the Senate to actually make this happen if they turn it to a party line vote. The problem is there are many Republicans who aren't too keen on voting for this as it is. And if voting on it today is Tuesday, as I'm recording this, Thursday when they think they'll vote on this, 2 days to turn this thing around and make it happy for the folks that don't like it is not looking too great. Yesterday, Serena Williams got a chance to snap back at John McEnroe again for John McEnroe again dissing Serena Williams for being a woman, essentially being a woman tennis player, but basically just being a woman. John McEnroe has a new book coming out, and in the book he talks about his life and all that great stuff. But he did an interview with NPR in which, once again, he was asked about comparing women to men. And once again, he was asked Serena particularly, who essentially has the chance of being, she's obviously the greatest in the generation right now, surpassing, even if by a margin, her sister Venus, who had a couple years head start on her. But looking at Serena versus the men, which is how you make these things happen. And in a Battle of the Sexes rehash from way back when, John McEnroe says that Serena would probably be like ranked number 700th in the world if you compared her straight up to the men. which is something he similar said before. He basically said that Serena is great. She's lovely. She's got the curls and the big muscles and all that stuff. But the problem is she's a woman and she can't play with the men. So people didn't like that. The Twitterverse didn't like that. The internet was awash with people blasting John McEnroe, who probably doesn't particularly care, but they did it anyway. Meanwhile, Serena did get a chance to speak her mind directly to Mr. McEnroe with a tweet. It reads, and I quote, "Dear John, I adore and respect you, but please, please, please keep me out of your statements that are not factually based. I've never played anyone ranked there, nor do I have the time. Respect me and my privacy as I am trying to have a baby. Good day, sir." End quote and tweet in the dealio. That's how that wrapped up. And 3 CNN journalists had to resign over a retracted story on Trump's Russia ties. Now, this one gets a bit complicated, and the reason why this seems sort of out of left field is because it's a story that never got put on the air. It was something that they released in the internet on their website that never really got a lot of big play because they spent a lot of times on the other big stories that so many things don't really get on the air on CNN, oddly enough. The 3 journalists from the investigative unit are leaving the network. They had to retract a story from June 22nd. It connected an ally to President Trump to a Russian investment fund. And because of that, it was citing some sources that said that the Senate investigators were examining a meeting between Anthony Scaramucci, which I totally butchered, and an executive from the Russia Direct Investment Fund, which is a $10 billion fund that directs investments from Russian companies this way. Of course, Scaramucci founded the hedge fund Skybridge Capital. He's on Trump's transitions team. There were no actual ties. The story, we don't know if this is fake news, but the connection there was very shaky and eventually was kind of broken up. This quote for a statement from CNN says, "Everyone makes mistakes. We're moving on." They scrapped it from the website. 3 people from the investigative unit who actually worked on the story are leaving because of the issue. And our first story for this morning, we'll get more details as things break out and we can get into it deeper, but the Civil Rights Memorial honoring Emmett Till in Mississippi vandalized overnight. So we'll see how this thing plays out and whether this thing rises to a major national attention scene. But this was one of the early stories we had. Had kind of a rough start getting things up this morning. That was the first thing that popped up in the feed. So we'll get to that one. Hopefully we'll catch up with a lot more stories on the day. As you've noticed, a shorter day on the day. We had a lot of things get wrapped up into the Supreme Court. And a lot of things working here locally with our Supreme Court and the story on the same-sex marriage birth certificate thing. So I had to do a lot of work here with our local news stations taking care of that. But today we expect to rebound and get a bit more extra into the step and extra into the feed. So hopefully you'll have a lot to respond to. Although you really did seem to respond to Dora the Explorer, a.k.a. Dora the Hurricane, and Serena Williams on John McEnroe. That got a lot of response yesterday. In the meantime, you want to respond to everything we have on the way today. I can't say planned because you don't really plan it. That would make it fake news, wouldn't it? Follow us on Facebook. This is The Conversation. Follow us on Twitter, @_conversation. And follow us on our website, thisistheconversation.com. Respond, reply, retweet, share. Do what you will. Just react with the stories, and that's how we know which ones you really, really, really love. Right now, Serena Williams has a good chance of being in the top 10 for the weekly wrap-up with all the responses she had. But we'll see if she can last the full 5 more days we have till Friday to record that episode. 5 days. 5, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. 4 days till Friday. Sometimes I lose out my days when you do this every single day. Thank you for being with us every single day. We appreciate that. And thank you for stopping by the website for all the great features. We want to make sure that you are taken care of. And so because we appreciate all you do to help us get the content, knowing what to talk about in the podcast and on the website, we have a special group called the Survey Panel, the Conversation Survey Panel. And if you join the panel, which just means filling out a form and waiting for a survey to come your way, we will send you surveys that various companies and groups are looking for your opinions. We'll send them to us to find you. And if we find you, we will send you money after you fill the survey. There are no qualifying survey hoops to jump through. You just put your name on the list, and if we find a good one, it's yours. You do it, we pay you directly through PayPal, just like that. Get in on this deal by going to thisistheconversation.com/survey panel. Meanwhile, thank you for being a part of everything we have going on here for This Is a Conversation. For more information about the other things I have going on that I think send a lot of things for as well, my main website is jclevelandpayne.net. Check it out there, see what's going on, see how we can help you, or maybe you can help us so we can help you again, if that makes sense. The whole circle of life, if you will. Meanwhile, the circle is closing on this broadcast, this episode, and we'll regroup with a full day of news and conversation to get into for another morning podcast coming out tomorrow. So thank you. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you share those as well. Give a review at wherever you get your podcast from. And be back tomorrow for more recaps and more conversations.